Hello everybody, my name is Randy Powell. I'm here to promote my project, which is called Project Abha. It's a project which is geared towards teaching about what I believe to be the most great name of God, what it means, how to intonate it, and what it can do. Purpose of this video is to give an introduction into how I came to this information, why I believe in it, what's my story, and how can other people use it and apply it to their own lives. It's going to culminate in the scientific and mathematical work that I'm doing, which is not so much for my own pleasure, but more to prove the concept. Okay, so a lot of people have been interested, who've known me, in how I came to this, and so it's been talked about how we would tell the story. So we're going to tell the story tonight. Basically, where it began for me, before I was even born, when my mother was a baby, it was during, I believe, the Korean War. My grandfather was going to be shipped back overseas to the war, and my grandmother was very shocked and upset, considering she had a young infant daughter. She was a very religious woman, so she proceeded to pray with her heart on this, and she didn't have anything to offer to God in service for the answer to her prayer, which was that my grandfather would not be shipped back overseas to the war. So what she offered was her singing voice. She was a professional singer. She offered her singing voice, and she told God that if he would answer her prayer, she would devote the rest of her life to singing his praises. And that night, as she got into bed, as she related to me, she had a vision of a being, a spiritual being. At the time when she told me this story, my question was, well, what did he look like? And she told me, well, he kind of looked like you. And that was that. When I was a little kid, when I was about 5 years old, I took a strong interest in a question, which was, what does a human soul look like? The reason that I had this question at such a young age, at 5 years old, was because of the death of my father when I was about 2 or 2.5. So I grew up with an awareness of death, grew up with an awareness and acceptance of the other world, and I was very interested in knowing what we looked like in the next world, what our body was in the next world, because I knew it wasn't this body that we have, and how to recognize my father. So I pursued this question as well as a 5-year-old can, which is basically just to observe and take in what was around me. Actually, I got the answer within a very short time, within about 2 or 3 days. I was standing in front of a veterinary office with my mother, picking up our cat, our family cat, and I looked above the door and I saw the symbol of the caduceus, the familiar medical symbol of 2 serpents coiling around an axis, crowned by wings at the top. Immediately when I looked at it, without any question, I knew that that was the answer to what I had been looking for, that this was the vision, the embodiment of the human soul, and it was the vehicle for the human soul. And I became, frankly, rather obsessed with it as a youth. When I would sit in church with my family, I would visualize this soul inside of my body, because I knew now that it was inside my body until I died. So the next question was, well, where is it? What I found was, when I looked inside of myself, that it was down near the base of my spine, where it was laying somewhat dormant, waiting to be activated. Okay? I also noticed when I looked throughout my body, if I let my mind travel through my body, there were little versions of this caduceus all throughout, spread throughout the body. And they were all focused at this focal center near the base of the spine. And I thought that was very interesting. The next obvious question that I had was, okay, well, what happens when you die? And so I imagined, I would close my eyes and I imagined this caduceus starting to move, starting to come alive. And I would see it coiling its way up my spine until it reached into my brain, where the wings would open up, the top of my head would open, and these serpents would fly out of the top of my head, up into the sky, up into the heaven, where they would land on cloud 9, which was, I got from, I believe, from the show Bewitched, where they would go to the spirit world and be on cloud 9. So I would often visualize this, the soul flying out of the head and landing on cloud 9, where it would be enveloped by the light of God. And that was what initially gave me my first mystical experience, which cannot be described by words, but which is essentially the light and the eternity of God. I was able to perceive it as a small child. And frankly, it scared me really terribly as a child. I wasn't too fond of it, but it stuck with me and haunted me as it obviously would to anyone. I grew up pretty much normally, living the same normal childhood that most people do, with the exception of these experiences. Though I found many children are very open to having these experiences until they unlearn it through social training. So I grew up fairly normally, but as I got older, I started to increasingly have more strange experiences, and I knew that they were giving me some kind of insight. It was like I was getting messages. Okay. I also had one other obsession other than the caduceus, which was a small green. It was really a piece of glass. I thought it was a crystal. It was really an ashtray, I think, but it was a green glass piece that my mother had, and I loved to pick it up and hold it up to my eye and look out through it at the world, and it would make everything kaleidoscopic, what we would call fractals now. It would show you how the whole image of what you see with your eyes is contained within each tiny facet of the crystal. And I loved the green color of it, and I called it the emerald. And I had this fascination with this ashtray when I was a kid. Then these were the things that I was fairly mentally involved with as a child, and it piqued my curiosity, and which tapped into my emotions. As I got older into my teenage years, I started to have more and more what you could call psychic experiences that let me know that there was a larger reality connecting all this, which was related to this way of looking at life like a crystal. Okay, some examples. One day I was working outside with my stepfather, building a fence, and the whole day it was this really bright, hot day. And we live in the South where there's lots of red clay. And I was looking out over all the red clay, and I was thinking about how I felt as if I was on Mars. And it went through my head all day long that this looked like standing on Mars. And then at the end of the day, I went inside and I received a phone call from my girlfriend at the time. And she said, "Guess where I went today?" And I said, "Where did you go?" She said, "I went to Mars." And it turned out she had gone to a completely different place that was this huge red clay mound. And she had been thinking the same thing all day. And I was amazed.